Cultivating Calmness Podcast. My name is Kaela Vance, and today I want to talk a little bit about our bodies and our mental health and how the two are interconnected. And we're going to touch a little bit on Memorial Day. So thank you for joining me. If you're joining me live, I hope you had a wonderful extended weekend, and I just wanted to bring some attention to why we celebrate Memorial Day, and not just the fact that maybe a lot of you had a extended weekend and time with your family and cookouts and things like that. Those are all great, and of course we love having those times and enjoying those times, but I think it's important for us to remember why we have that time and why the day is remembered to begin with, and why it's called Memorial Day. So Memorial Day is for our veterans who died serving our country, and that could mean many different things, but there are many service members who have died in war, who have died protecting us, fighting for our freedoms here in the United States. And that is why we have that day off here in May. That is why we have the parades, and we have all of the cookouts and the freedoms that we have to be able to do those things and say the things that we want to say and have the different opinions that we have. Because of these men and women who have fought for us and made the choice to sacrifice, and some of them paying the ultimate sacrifice. And so for their families and friends who are still here and grieving their loss, our hearts go out to you, and my thoughts and prayers are with you. And being a therapist, as somebody who works with and treats trauma, we know that many veterans will experience symptoms of PTSD and depression and anything similar to that that often goes untreated. And that is very sad for the people serving our country, that they aren't given the same type of resources and the same type of help, if not more, than everybody else in the general public. And as a therapist, I offer my services to servicemen and women, and I know that it can be difficult out there to be able to get services, especially when not covered by insurance. We want to think about all of the members who need help, who are struggling. And so that's kind of why I wanted to talk about our mind and our body and the stress that we experience, and how those things are connected. So it's not just the things that we see and just the things that we necessarily experience. Oftentimes when we are experiencing health problems, they can be connected to mental, physical stressors, traumas that we experienced earlier on in life, or maybe even currently. So I actually recently, I listened to a lot of audiobooks, especially when I'm busy doing other things. And I listened to a book by Gabor Maté, and it was called When the Body Says No, the hidden things behind stress. And what he showed in that book was the different characteristics and the different traits of people with different physical ailments and physical diagnoses, such as ALS and multiple sclerosis and cancers, different types of cancers. There were specific mental stressors related to specific types of cancer, different diagnoses. So those were some of the ones that stand out as the ones that I specifically recall. And he went through his past patients and people that he knew and the research, and showed how all of these people had certain stressors in their lives, especially when they were younger, potentially related to their relationship with their parents or the things they experienced growing up, and how those things could be connected to the physical diagnosis they were currently experiencing in life. And so some of those being like they can't say no, or they didn't feel heard, always having to appease people. And he was able to show the certain traits and characteristics of different people with a certain diagnosis and how those like lined up. And so what was I think the one example was ALS, or what we call here in America often Lou Gehrig's disease. And I think that was the one. I could be wrong because I don't have the written form, the physical copy of it yet, but that is probably a book I'm going to get a physical copy of. But one of the characteristics of people with Lou Gehrig's disease, I guess, in the research and when talking to doctors and nurses and people who worked with these clients, they when they were doing testing to find out if they had certain illnesses, they could tell what their illness would be based on their personality before their results came back. And it was something really high, in the 90s percentage that they were correct. If, a person was overly kind and, generous and thoughtful and thankful and, cared about like the assistance and the help they were getting and were just overall like a very nice person, they would say that their diagnosis was going to be ALS. And I found that to be fascinating, just given what we know about the body and what we hold on to. And how, when we hold on to stress, it can lead to future problems. And maybe that's not immediate, right? Maybe it's not in 6 months or a year. Maybe it's in 10 years. Maybe it's in 25 years. But that stress continues to wreak havoc on your system and on your body. So if you're interested in that and you want to know more about how we hold on to stress and how those stressors can, cause that domino effect of health problems for you and your family, I would highly recommend that book, giving it a, checking it out and seeing what you think about it. So that's just my quick synopsis of that. But, when I talk about holistic health, that's what I mean. So when I want to talk to people, I often, I'll spend several sessions getting to know somebody when they come into my office. So we call that an intake. Generally, an intake is technically one session, but we're always doing intake. We're always learning about clients. And for me, it can take several sessions to really get to know somebody, get to know their struggles, get to know their history. And, I could be seeing somebody for, years and still learning new things about them down the road, 2 years later, because, they feel more comfortable sharing things, or it just are facts that come out in conversation in a different way. So I find that when I first meet people, I'm doing the history, I'm reading over the information that they provide me in their intake paperwork, and I'm usually trying to gather more information. So they'll give me a little bit of something, whether it's their diet or whether it's past experiences with family members. And, I'll ask questions to get a little bit more, like, tell me a little bit more about, your mom and dad. You wrote here that, your parents got divorced, but they seemed happy. How was that experience for you? And what I end up finding is that there are, deeper connections. There are things that are, way down deep, things that maybe have been pushed away, things that maybe each of these clients that I see aren't things that they're really thinking about, but because I'm hearing them, they're saying them, I'm able to, connect some of those dots. And I'm not always right. I am trying to piece together information based on what somebody is telling me. And that's what doctors do. Medical doctors, they're taking your symptoms and they're trying to connect that to a diagnosis. And as a mental health professional, we do the same thing. We're hearing your symptoms, your reported symptoms. So that's what you're telling me, or even what I'm observing. And if they add up to enough things, you will have a diagnosis. I tend to not focus on that diagnosis because I want to know where did that come from? So you're telling me these stories about your childhood, about your current situations. And I am able to sometimes, not all the time, pull out some themes, pull out some patterns in behavior based on what you're telling me. And sometimes the expressions I see on people's faces, sometimes they light up, sometimes they're shocked, how did you do that? And oh my gosh, you're right. And I never thought of it like that. And that makes me smile. Not that I'm pointing out something bad and that makes me happy. It doesn't. But it makes me happy that connections are being made, and that you're making realizations. And when you have information, that's when you can do something with that information. It's when you don't have the information, you just know that there's something going on, that it can be hard to know what to do next. If I have information, but or if I have symptoms, but I'm not sure what they add up to, and I'm not sure where they're coming from and why it's happening, then I don't know what to do with it. I don't know, what's going on and what the problem is. So in a medical field, that would be testing. Testing different things to find out different answers. We can do some of that for mental health, but it's going to relate back to your physical health. So getting your vitamin D tested, that's a pretty simple one, can lead to many different ailments. It is a very common deficiency to have, and it is interconnected with many systems in your body. And so if you're deficient in that, you're going to be deficient everywhere else. It's kind of like how, when you connect the dots and you make a picture. Well, if you take a dot out, you take a number out, can you complete the picture? Technically, no, right? You could skip something, right? You could skip over it and go, oh, 9 is missing. We'll just go from 8 to 10. Maybe that makes the picture. Maybe that changes, what it looks like. But, skipping it doesn't solve the problem at hand, which is, where's the number 9? When you are deficient in something, the domino effect, the connect the dots, it can cause problems down the line for all the other dots, for all the other dominoes. So if you ever watched a domino show where they knock one down and it keeps going, right? If one doesn't knock down, somebody has to go over there and continue the pattern because something went wrong. When you, again, have a deficiency in vitamin D, you can have difficulty with your calcium and vitamin K, and with your depression and your anxiety and your sleep. And I know I'm not thinking of all the things, but it is connected to all those things. And that piece of the puzzle being missing causes problems in that cascade of everything else. So it's not just your brain. It's not just the problems that you're coming to see me for. So when you go to therapy, that's great. I'm glad you're going to therapy and you're talking about your problems. That's one step. Getting the stuff out of your brain, out of your body is awesome. You don't want to keep that stuff pent up inside. That's going to add that stress. So that is good. The thing that I say is that I can't fix your vitamin D problem. Right? You coming to talk to me isn't going to fix your vitamin D problem. You coming to talk to me isn't going to fix your hormones, isn't going to fix, your MS, isn't going to fix your ALS. It's not going to fix those things. It may help. It may be a piece in the puzzle. It may start to lower your stress, which may start to have that, again, cascade of positive effects. But it's also not going to be the whole picture. So that's why I like to talk about the whole picture with you listeners, with my clients, and so we can figure out how to best help you, how to get you the most overall effect and change. And that's going to be in addressing not just the mental health, but the physical health, your spiritual health, your emotional health. It's going to be addressing all those aspects of you and what's going on with you. And that's where you're going to see more progress. So when I talk to people, sometimes we're talking about going to see a chiropractor, we're talking about changing your diet, we're talking about potentially getting tested, and what providers you can see that can do that for you. And what I see is that when people start to do those things, they start to take control of their health, and they start to learn their problems and learn how to more effectively, heal themselves. And that can help people feel better as well, as knowing that they're in control and they're doing something about the problems that they're seeing. So I hope that just gives you a different perspective today. I know it wasn't a long chat, but I wanted to kind of put that out there. Hopefully you found some inspiration. You might go read that book and let me know what you think about it. I hope all of you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and thank you all who are currently serving, have served, for your service, and for those who have passed. We thank them greatly for their service and their sacrifice, and our thoughts and prayers go out to their families and their friends. And I will see you again next week for the Cultivating Calmness podcast. Have a wonderful rest of your day.